and I was just like, you like cigarettes? I like cigarettes.
Yeah.
Also, though.
We don't have sources on this show.
Boy Meets World ruined my life.
What if the goats are trying to communicate?
You guys ever listen to Botch? I put on a lot of weight. I am the elephant in the room.
Welcome to Tales from the Ditch. This is Sean. I'm here with Seth, and we are both here graced with the glorious and Mexican presence of Tony Clark.
Hola.
Welcome. We were discussing Irish whiskeys earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You're how much Irish? 80% Irish?
That's a good estimate.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Just go east and you'll run into my family.
That's right. The Clarks.
Yeah, they're there.
Is that true? Or are you yanking our chain again?
I'll tell you what, you go over there and head
you
east
new
and tell me what
boot
you find.
Are you new boot goofing right now? Tony, at the house of Clark, in the 40 years we've known him, he's been a solid dude. Sponsored by Slain Irish Whiskey.
You know, I did new boot goof one time when I got these new boots, and I did the laces going from inside to out. Such a big goof on my part. I regretted that for about 7 minutes.
Guess who's been getting calls from the Bernie Sanders campaign? My
Your
wife.
mom? Oh, your wife.
No, my mom's going to get the mail. But Jess is like,
right.
The Bernie Sanders campaign called me. She goes, and I'm trying to get Maverick in the car. She's like, I'm trying to be nice.
They always call it the worst moment.
Yeah.
Especially when you give them especially when you give them your spouse's number.
Well, how you guys doing? What are we talking about tonight?
Well, I got a few topics, but I want to start with a hilarious story.
Oh,
Let's hear it.
I want to hear this story.
I'm going to start at a 15 and then build to a 30. I heard an interesting story from my mom about my dad, which made me super like him more. And it's about Cub Scouts. So when Jeb, my older brother, not a lot of you know Jeb, he's actually the intense brother, that's the funny thing. When he was in Cub Scouts, there was a kid he didn't get along with, whose dad was like a den master or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a D&D master, it's worthless, it has no authority.
Nice.
But he messed with Jeb, terrible attitude, just punk kid. Mess with him
His
a lot.
kid, the Den Master's kid.
Yeah, he was a punk kid. And Jeb,
They always are.
Anyone who's met him, he's not that tall of a dude. Like, he's stocky, but he's not a, like, super tall dude.
Okay.
So this kid had some issue with him. I don't remember what started, but kept messing with him. And my dad was volunteering with Cub Scouts. And I guess what happened was he saw the conflict that kept happening and was sick of the complaining. So he goes, all right, Jeb, so-and-so, come with me. So they go outside the building or house, whatever they were at. I think it was snowing. And he goes, okay, you guys are going to fight. And the boy...
Really?
Yeah, and the boy was surprised, like, excuse me, Mr. Wild. She goes, no, he goes, you guys have an issue. This is how you settle it. And my dad, like, sat down on, like, a rock or whatever just to make sure, no one died. And he goes, oh, hold on. And he goes over to Jeb and, like, leans down to talk to him. He goes, now, Jeb, he goes, I'm going to tell you this once. There is no such thing as dirty when it comes to fighting.
Perfect.
He's like, so you can do whatever you want, but you settle it here. And he goes, okay. And he goes back, sits down, and my brother does a double leg, I guess, gets the guy on the ground, and just pummels the crap out of him into dirt. And finally my dad goes, okay, that's enough. He goes, all right, shake hands. And the kid's like, whatever, gets mad. And my dad's like, okay. Takes Jeb inside. And I guess like an hour later, everyone realizes what had happened. But that was my dad's way of solving it.
Hey,
for your
which I
dad.
super appreciate. I was like, thank you, Alan Matthew.
I do appreciate that.
It just, Jeb, for some reason, dude, like, I know he has an intense personality, but I don't think it's only that. There'd always be dudes who wanted to challenge him. Like, even when he wasn't being a jerk, and I think it's because he was kind of a leader in a lot of ways, but he was shorter, they thought they could mess with him, and I don't know if Jeb ever fought someone the same size. They were always bigger. But, yeah, because when he played on the football team, for high school, he was 5'1".
That's not that big.
No. Like, now he's like 5'8", I think. 5'8", maybe.
Still not that big.
But still, yeah. So it's like he had to really, like, when he went to Marines, same thing. He wasn't the biggest, but he always had heart.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I think I knew that story with my dad because I remember when I had a kid at Bible study when I was 8 who kept socking me in the stomach and I would like get the wind knocked out of me.
Right.
My dad goes, well, yeah, just walk up and hit him in the face. And I'm like, and my mom said, I said, what is this, Vietnam? I'm not going to fight because that's the only war I'd heard of was Vietnam.
Right.
The next week I ended up fighting him. And Jeb was there watching. And I was like, oh, you did really learn from our dad. And he discipled you well. See, that's discipleship. So disciples making disciples.
Yeah, right?
And the kid stopped messing with me. We were friends after that. Jeb's guy wasn't friends with him after that. I think it's because it was so one-sided. So massively one-sided. But, yeah, the more you know. This has been Doctrine and Devotion. See you later.
Were you ever in Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts, Tony?
No. We had no money for that.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, it doesn't necessarily take money to sign up, but to like be involved and like go places. My mom wasn't. You know what's funny about my mom? It's actually not funny. It's actually very irritating. I remember my wife and I were just talking about this the other day because my son, he's 5, he's playing football for his first year this year.
Dang, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's
doing good.
He's doing really good. Yeah, tackle football. And I was talking to my wife. I was like, I remember this one time. It was in elementary school, and a couple of my friends were playing baseball. They, like with like Valley Providence baseball. They were in a league, and so I went with them and. The coach saw me kind of sitting on the side. He's like, you got a glove? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, why don't you come on and practice with us?
Oh, nice.
Cool.
That's
all right.
Cool.
Yeah, so I go out there and I start practicing. I'm doing whatever. And at the end of the practice, he comes up. He's like, hey, man, I have an extra jersey. He's like, take this paperwork home, have your mom fill it out. I'll pay for it. Just have her sign off, because she's your guardian.
Saw some talent.
Dude, I'm pumped, dude. So I go home. I have the paperwork with me. I go to my mom and tell her everything that just happened. And get this. She goes, I'm not going to sign you up for that. And I was like, well, no, it's not going to cost anything. She's like, no, you get in too much trouble. I'm not going to sign you up for that.
Oh, dang.
To this day. And I said to her in this moment, I'm like, wait a second. You're not going to sign me up for something that's going to take up my time where I could do something productive because I'm getting Exactly.
Brutal.
Yeah.
That is brutal.
I still am very sore about that. I could have been in the, major league. I don't know.
Could have been one of the greats.
Could have been a champ.
Could have been a champ.
Could have been a contender.
How do you guys... All right, and this is a question people are going to get mad about. How do you navigate teaching your sons conflict resolution? Because some people say... All right, perfect example. They go, well, I feel conflicted if, because there's the whole debate of spanking or not spanking. And then some people say, well, I feel conflicted spanking him, but then telling him he can't hit. Mm-hmm. Or there's the argument of, okay, you tell them they can't hit their brother or hit you, but if someone messes with them at school, it's okay to hit back. And the reason why I'm asking this is kids up to a certain point only understand concrete. They don't understand the abstract yet. Or nuance.
Sure.
So navigating that of saying, let's look at a few of the scenarios of saying, I can spank you, but you're not allowed to go around hitting people. Or to say, well, you can't hit your brother and hitting's not okay. But if someone threatens you at school and you have to protect yourself, it's okay to hit back then because there really is some nuance there of having to show them that there's a time, there's an occasion, there's motivation, there's context, there's when is it, because this is why I always had issue with people saying violence never solves anything. Because you're saying an absolute statement. It never solves anything. And then all it takes is one kid who goes, well, what about cops? And they go, well, besides them. Well, what about soldiers? Well, besides them. Well, and if you're going to say never versus saying, well, we have a rule at school, we don't handle it that way. How do you guys navigate that? Because you guys got boys who I assume mine are violent.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I blame their mother. But what do you guys think?
So, I mean, I've actually, it's funny you said it. So we had a conference with the teacher. My son's in kindergarten. I've already had to go to his school because we've had to deal with this exact issue where, basically the situation is there's this girl that he really just adores and she adores him and, they're good friends. And so I guess what happened is a couple of the parents started calling the teachers saying that my son had been hitting him. And knowing my son the way I do and watching him play football, I'm like, well, Luke is not, he's like me. We'll fight back, but we never start it because we're usually too afraid to start the fight. But him and I are both the same. We're too scared to throw the first punch. We don't want it to go there. So the teacher's telling me this. I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, something's off. because it doesn't make sense with Luke just punching a kid just out of nowhere. I'm like, he's never done that to anybody. I mean, yeah, with his cousins or with his friends, he'll roughhouse and wrestle and chase, whatever. But like to just hurt somebody? So after talking with my son, come to find out the girl that he's been hanging out with, there's these two boys that hit her and like push her down and tackle her and are rude to her.
Yeah.
So he, in his own decision making, said, one, that's his friend, and two, boys don't treat girls like that.
Good boy.
So he defended her, and that's what happened. But then he never told anybody. He just defended her and moved on with his day as if, business as usual. That's right. So then I'm getting a hold of this, and so my wife is like, oh my gosh, she's reacting one way. I'm like, well, hold on. First of all, I'm not going to penalize my son for protecting anybody. A girl, a boy, whatever, a friend.
Right.
Even an enemy.
Yeah.
Like if he's stepping up to protect somebody because the person being attacked can't, isn't that exactly what we pay our police officers for? So at some point in time, I have to teach him that, yes, standing up and protecting people who maybe can't or won't protect themselves is a good thing. But then he got in trouble because one of the boys he doesn't like, he took their food and threw it on the ground and then stepped on it. So I'm not saying that violence is a bad thing, but I mean, I guess the way I grew up is I always try to talk myself out of the situation.
Yeah,
always.
yeah.
But sometimes you can't. Sometimes the person that you were trying to talk to and the situation you were trying to get out of, that person doesn't care what you have to say and they showed up to hurt you.
Yeah, totally.
So you have two choices. Fight back to protect yourself or take a beating that could potentially hurt you. Or again, if you're protecting somebody, it can hurt them. So for me, I don't necessarily think violence is a bad thing. And I wouldn't necessarily call all fighting violent because if we're going to call ourselves Christian and say that we believe in life and the sanctity of life, then protecting somebody is protecting that person's life. Maybe even just the quality of their life, making sure that they don't get picked on or bullied.
Yeah, yeah.
So to me, it's like, well, fighting to defend somebody, I wouldn't consider that violence. Now, if my son just got a crazy idea to just go to school one morning and just beat the crap out of some kid till he's bleeding, all right, that might be considered violence, but I don't know. That's kind of where I'm coming from with it.
Why would you say something so controversial? That's so great.
So, I mean, I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it, and like, if you read the Bible, I don't think that you would get a pacifistic, Jesus, hence the cross.
Yeah,
that's not something a pacifist would do. So, I don't know. That's just kind of where I come from with. I don't know what you guys think.
I don't know. This is like a hard thing for me to navigate because I'm on one hand. So I have this conversation because my kids started kindergarten this year too. A lot less mature than either of your kids when they were 5. But he started kindergarten and he went into kindergarten and he's struggling a little bit because everybody, is just a little more mature than him. And I don't think that's a problem. I would have liked to have waited a year and put him in kindergarten late, but what can you do? But either way, I had to tell him because Chris was terrified of this because Danger likes to fight. He's not a brutish, angry bully kid. He likes to fight. He enjoys punching and wrestling and shooting fake guns and blah, 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 blah. He loves it, but he's also like really tender. You know what I mean? If he loses a fight, he's traumatized. Or if he gets hurt or hurts somebody during a fight, he's traumatized. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just had to tell him, and we told him something along the lines of, we said, hey, if somebody's being a jerk to you, what do? You tell your teacher. And if somebody is annoying you, you tell your teacher. And if there's somebody that you don't like, you tell your teacher. But if there's somebody who's hurting somebody and you can do something to stop it, you should do what you can to stop it.
Absolutely.
And then tell your teacher that's why you did it.
Yes.
And I said, if anybody touches your wiener or tells you to take off your clothes, you kick them in the balls or, I don't know.
Stab them.
Or do whatever you can. You bite them, you do anything you have to do because that's not okay.
Exactly.
And I think he kind of gets it. That's the thing, is it's hard to communicate with him because he doesn't 100%.
He's 5.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our rules. But like the thing is, violence. Jesus at some point, he was talking about John the Baptist and he says, like, ever since I think John the Baptist had just been beheaded, and he goes, ever since then, people have been making their way into heaven through violence. It's like violent men have been the ones breaking down the doors of heaven. And it's a pretty confusing hermeneutic, I think, but I think basically he's saying there's this spirit of confidence in God, or there's this spirit in confidence in justice that sometimes manifests as violence. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And we would never say that. We would never say, oh my gosh, those soldiers in World War II protecting the Jews. The violence was a terrible issue. Or we would never say, like you guys are saying, a police officer. I mean, what do they do besides shoot unarmed black people? I guess they protect.
Dang it, Sean.
I'm sorry. No. A police officer doing their job. Okay, sorry. A police officer who's not corrupt and not a racist, doing their job to protect people. We're not saying that they shouldn't use violence. So violence in itself isn't a bad thing. It's always about your motive, I guess. And basically, it's really hard to teach my son that, because my son, like any boy, is a little prideful. And if he gets outdone, or if there's some type of competition or something like that, he gets angry and tries to overcome, right?
Right.
And usually it's by overcorrecting and becoming more violent, and that's not good. But it's kind of, this is corny, but it's kind of like William Wallace when he's a little kid and his uncle comes by and he says, until you've learned the wisdom, it's not wise to pick up the sword.
Yes.
Something along those lines. And I agree with that. So I'm hoping to
learn
wait
to use
until
this before you can use this.
Before
yes,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm hoping to do that. It's just like I'm not really that wise, so it's hard to teach my kid wisdom. But on the other hand, too, I do not. My worst fear is that I or my son wouldn't react in a situation where they should. Mm-hmm. Or we should.
Well, and I think it comes down to personal choice. Like, if you feel that violence is too much, it's too far, it's evil, it's wicked, it's just, you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you allowed yourself to become violent, then I would say, then you shouldn't let yourself go there.
Right.
But
freedom of conscience.
Yeah, like allow your listen to your conscience. I mean, you have to live with the decisions you make, right? So there's a point where, if you're admitting to yourself that if I allow myself to make a decision that brings harm to another person, I can't live with myself, okay. Nobody's telling you to be violent then. But to say to those who are willing to run towards chaos, run into a war, run into a house where there's, domestic violence and straighten it out and protect people, to say that, oh no, you can't stop violence. Like, well, I would argue that. Because to not fight violence and to stand by idly and do nothing just allows violence to have a freedom that it shouldn't.
Yeah, and the spiritual realm is pretty violent. And even if we're not it's not like piercing the darkness where we have these swords and we're fighting giant demons, but it's still, you're taking violent action to die to yourself, to put your flesh to death, to fight against the temptation of the enemy and stuff like that. That's violent. It may not be physically violent, but it's still definitely violent.
The Bible uses not only analogies for athletes, but militaristic and kingdom language. Because if you notice, it's put it to death, or allegiance to your king, or the enemy who opposes you and says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but still uses forceful language. It doesn't say the bad guy or the big new is this. It's our enemy, our opponent, our nemesis, our die to yourself. All of it is very militaristic, aggressive, violent, and I know some of it's hyperbole, but it is interesting. He uses very forceful language to show, even in church history, the language is make war with your sin.
Yeah.
Put it to death.
Yeah.
But.
Also, it would be really hard to say that through pacifism. Gosh, I don't know. This is hard because I feel like a lot of people would present these same ideas that we're discussing today by saying that you have to protect gun rights to the death, right? Because it's that's our ability.
Well, they'll take it to the other side, yeah.
Yeah, and they say our ability to carry out this justice or to maintain this justice or to keep people from taking our guns and taking our jobs. Like, we have to be able to arm ourselves. And I don't want to sound like that, you know?
Well, I think you have to,
because I don't think that's as important as a lot of people do.
well, and I think with that, like, if we're going to specifically talk, like on that specific subject, fighting for your gun rights, there's a point where you have to ask yourself, because I hear a lot of Christian gun owners that fight for their guns, where I'm like, what kingdom are you fighting for?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because if our guns get taken away, the most important thing is that we fight for our religious freedoms.
Yeah.
Fight to be Christians. Fight to be able to have a church.
Yeah.
Fight to be able to proclaim Christ in a society where we don't be put to death for it.
Right.
Not the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
There is a fine line where I've heard men that I respect, but I challenge, because I'm thinking, man, you're pretty borderline for fighting for your kingdom, the kingdom of what you define as safe.
Your homestead.
Where you're the authority because you have the gun. But that's not the Christian worldview.
Well, it makes me wonder. I've asked some of these guys, like, okay, if the government, because you have to follow stuff to its logical conclusion. I said, okay, if the government does say we're going to take your guns, and they come to your door, whether it's an FBI agent or cop, are you going to shoot them? I just want to know, how far are you going to take? Because if they say, and I've had guys who go, well, we'll get there. No, hold on.
No.
You said this. I want to know. Are you going to, because what if it's one of our brothers and they go, well, they shouldn't be enforcing that law? Not what I asked. We're talking about you right now. Whether or not it's a just law, are you going to shoot a cop? Are you going to start killing, like Bundy, when they took over that, what was it? It was like a park or whatever. You remember that family? They stood there. Yeah. And there were people rooting for him, like, well, they're just defending their rights. They're just being patriots. They're standing up for themselves. I go, okay, if it had gone down worse, because one guy did get shot, but if it had gone down worse where the agents stormed that place and those guys shot the cops or shot FBI agents or just killed police, would you still say they were patriots, or would you call them thugs? The same way you talk about black gang members who shoot cops. Because when a black gang member or a Black Panther who says he's standing up for his rights shoots a cop, we wouldn't call him a patriot. We'd say they're a terrorist, a thug. Lots of these people would. But this guy, well, would they still be patriots if they're shooting cops? Especially when they broke the law and the cop is just doing their job. And it's like, it is interesting, this perception of, I've seen an equivocation now of un-American equals sinful. They're almost the same. Because I notice in the argument, they don't even necessarily go right to scripture or say this is wrong because biblically it's wrong or it's sinful. They go, well, this is wrong because, well, that's un-American.
It's un-American.
And it almost equals sinful. It's almost like there's no dividing wall between them. It's un-American and sinful, exact same. They are equivalent of. I even saw, a post once, and I do love the guy, but it was of, in my experience, the people who kneel, during the anthem are a type who would never kneel to Jesus, and that's a fact. And it's like, well, and it is, it's one thing to have those opinions and say, well, I think this or I'm patriotic, that's fine. But when you start saying it's the same as sinful, like, oh, un-American is the same as sin, I go, no.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, I think I lean more towards the kneel. I lean that direction. Yeah. Because I'm not 100% happy with where our country is today.
Why do you hate God, Tony?
Basically the kneel isn't so much, the reason why I kind of support it, I don't necessarily support Kaepernick. Okay, so that's not what I'm saying. But as far as
if a good football player kneeled, everybody'd be like, okay with it.
No,
I don't know. I don't know sports, you guys.
Dude, I'm
just thinking.
Well, I have a bias against Kaepernick. I'm not his biggest fan, and anybody who knows me knows that. But talking about the kneeling and taking, well, I guess not taking a stand, I agree with it because I think more people need to stand up, take a knee, and just say, no, I don't agree with where we're at. And I'm making a statement that just simply says we can do and be better. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that.
Absolutely.
And I think as a society, taking a knee, maybe just saying that, hey, I'm taking responsibility for the fact that on both sides of the aisle, there's responsibility. And neither side is taking it because we're too busy pointing the finger and shifting the blame. And
if you're not allowed to call out errors in a nation or an entity or an organization or even a person.
Yeah.
Like a guy, I know a ton of guys out there who will not ever admit that there's any possibility that they're wrong about something. You know what I
sure.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's always like good things, right? It's theology stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's people who are 100% convinced that they are completely correct about their theology, and they would not budge an inch. And some people would say, hey, that's admirable. They know what they believe and they believe it to the death. But a man who can't admit that he could be wrong is a dangerous man. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And same with an organization, a nation, or whatever. That's the thing about Trump that I see all the time too, is he like can never admit he's wrong. Even when it's like where a hurricane is and he says it wrong and it's an honest mistake. He just goes, no, it was in Alabama. It was in Arizona. We have hurricanes there all the time. And I'm just like, dude, you need to just say, oh, I actually made a typo or mistake.
Oh, my bad, everybody.
Do you know he
just say it?
Kaepernick, before he did that, he met with a veteran to talk to him, and it was the veteran's suggestion that he take a knee because he said, well, what's a like respectful way I could protest? And it was the veteran's suggestion of like,
oh wow,
this
really?
is if you look it up, he said basically like, in my opinion, man, like this would be the most respectful way where you're just kneeling, you're not doing anything loud or abrasive. That'd be the most respectful way to protest.
Here's my problem with that whole specific situation with Kaepernick. So yes, I'm admitting I have a bias towards the guy. I didn't like him as an athlete. I didn't think he was great.
Well, he's Nevada's hero.
Cool.
Tony
For like
dislikes
2
it
years.
so much.
I don't care. So I'm admitting that. That being said, and I'm putting that out there so everybody can have an honest opinion against me.
No, that's good.
So that being said, my biggest beef with him taking a knee during the game, the way he did, and then the way he reacted towards it, I guess the way I equate it is like, that would be like me going to work, and when a customer walks in and asks to do business, I take a knee.
Yeah.
I'm not paid to proclaim my political, theological, philosophical stances at work.
Right.
I'm paid to do a job and represent the company that I work for. During that time that I'm clocked in, they pay me to do a specific job. And I agreed to that when I signed my contract.
Right.
So did Kaepernick.
Yeah.
You were paid to play football. Now,
are they paid to stand for the I'm legitimately
now,
asking.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
I am also admitting that, again, I just admitted earlier, I lean towards the knee. I don't know if I necessarily like saying the Pledge of Allegiance anymore because, again, I'm not happy with where our country is.
Yeah.
And my allegiance isn't to the country. My allegiance is to Christ, not the United States of America.
Right.
So, do I applaud Kaepernick to have the boldness to do that? And he knew the backlash that was coming.
Yeah,
So yes, I applaud him for that. But at the same time, I also understand the other side where it says, dude, it's the NFL, man.
Yeah.
Like, you play for the 49ers. Just do your job. And honestly, your stats suck anyway, so maybe you should worry about, like, completing passes and not taking a knee. So,
yes.
you know, again, have a bias towards the guy. But the problem is I think he would have won people over had he chosen another time to take the same stance. Because we all know he's a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And had he worked harder on his career, he would have probably kept a broader platform to be able to speak his side. And that's where I feel bad for him. Because I just think he chose it in an unwise time. Now, that's just me. People can disagree with me all they want, but at the same time, I'm also saying that I do agree with at least having enough freedom to say no. I don't agree with where we're at, and I'm going to make some sort of stand or proclamation that, hey, there's an issue, and I want to make it known, and I want to talk about it.
Yes. I agree. I don't understand why kneeling was such a big deal. Kneeling is something you do to show honor to something, so just because it's not our type of American, you got to put your hand on your heart. Unless you're like the broadcaster or unless you're the cameraman who's filming the people doing that. Like, I just think it's just hypocritical sometimes when it comes to Americanism. And
my biggest problem with America and the whole God and country and patriotism is, what about the Christian in another country?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're believers too.
Right? They are believers. So a Christian in the USA is just as valuable as a Christian in, whatever side of career you're in. Palestine. Doesn't matter where you're from. If you love and proclaim Christ, you have value in Christ.
Yeah.
And as brothers and sisters, we should be uplifting our brothers and sisters. The problem is we're taking our allegiance to our country and making it sound like, no, we're the real Christian because we're American, which is crap.
Yes.
And I hate it, and it bugs the crap. It boils my blood when people start acting like that. Because, look, if we go to war, yeah, I can take safety that if I had to go fight in a war and I shot somebody else who's a Christian, I can at least take solace in the fact that they knew Christ and they're going to be with Christ. But in no way, shape, or form am I better than them because I'm American.
Right.
No. It really, it's interesting to me, the hypocrisy, because you remember Tebow.
Tebow time.
People I knew on the left, when he kept kneeling, doing Tebowing or whatever, they said, just play football. Who cares about your personal beliefs? Shut up. And my friends on the right were like, hey, he's standing up for his faith. He's just being proud. Now, Kaepernick, the people who are criticizing Tebow go, hey, he's just standing up for his beliefs. And some of my friends on the right are like, and I get the point. They're like, no, he's paid to play, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is, it's not that I don't get their argument, but they're both hypocritical because they all make these little concessions for when it's their team. Like, when a basketball player says something, Laura Ingraham said, shut up and dribble. But then when they don't talk about China and say, hey, we're not going to say anything, she goes, you should be speaking out now. She is correct in the fact that it is hypocritical to me, and I can't believe I'm saying this about her. It is hypocritical to me that they will stand up for one justice issue, but then be silent about China, who's violated human rights for forever. They had forced abortions also. So she's right on that hypocrisy. What I don't agree with is, wait, you said they shouldn't make political stances. You said they should shut up and play. But now when it's your issue, you're saying they should speak up. They should. And this is the left and right in this eternal PR battle to show why the other side's the worst, the other side's the problem. And the funny thing is, even this whole notion you brought up of American Christianity, we're not even the center anymore. If you look at statistically, a huge number of Christians now are in South America, Asia, all these other areas.
It's not like, that we're not the center anymore. We were never the center.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Good point, yeah.
Christ is the center, not America. And see, that's the problem I have with at least American thinking, because I've never anywhere else, is that we Americans are very like, we're the best. This is America.
Yeah.
And because we're Christians in America, that makes us even more Christian. It's like, you just sound ignorant. You just
boast in nothing other than Christ crucified.
Than Christ alone.
That
yes.
is all you boast in.
Yes.
And yeah, we attempt, when we try to bring Christ to foreign entities, we say we're going to bring, well, I'm not saying always, but I'm saying a lot of the time in my experience, when we go and we do a mission trip or we try to evangelize to a group, we're evangelizing, hopefully, God willing, these people would be saved. But second, if not first, they would adopt our cultural characteristics and stop living like these, dirt floor savages, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like completely hypocritical.
Right.
And
it's colonizing. It's not evangelizing.
Exactly. And so, like, how many cultures do you think that are Christian cultures and, like, the Lord has worked that terrible situation for good, thank God. But how many cultures do you think got started off completely on the wrong foot, assuming that their worth and value, that their image in of God was determined by their cultural care? We do the stupidest, sometimes we have these stupidest things like, hey, everybody, like, I experienced this when I went to Southern America. I was like, you people, you need to fix your plumbing because you cannot throw toilet paper in the trash after you use it. That's just, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And it took me a really long time to understand that. Or actually, all the time, here's what we do, actually. As Christians, we push this abstinence-only sex education on people.
Okay.
When our very faith is founded upon the fact that abstinence is not 100% effective.
Explain.
Because it doesn't work 100% of the time, abstinence.
Well, no, I mean work against what?
In what sense are you talking about? Like
prevent childbirth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, because you can still be
okay,
sexually assaulted. Okay. You can still
No. I'm saying Jesus was born, and that was an abstinent relationship. Right?
Sure.
But as Christians, we make that our main thing, right?
Right.
That's our big thing. You cannot have sex before marriage. And I'm not advocating sex before marriage.
Yes,
I'm just saying let's not be hypocritical about these things. Or we say, for example, like the number one most devastating thing that's happened is homosexuality. And it's like, there's a lot worse things going on out there than homosexuality. But that's like how we it's ridiculous. It's hypocritical. And it's like, honestly, it's the almost opposite way that I feel like we should be entering brand new cultures.
Sure.
To bring them Christ. We're bringing our culture first instead of Christ first. And I think it's disgusting. And it's a travesty all the time we do that.
Because I think I got it. So, outside Jesus' miraculous birth, and I just want to hear what you'd respond to. I'm okay with saying, here's the standard. Here's what the Bible calls us to. Here's where sex should take place. Here's grace for when that doesn't happen, for when we don't meet that standard. For people who've been assaulted, here's how we walk through it. And also say and let's talk about those desires and talk about wrestling through it and talk about how it's a good thing. Because it sounds like I think your issue is more with people just saying, don't have sex.
No. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, we spearhead campaigns of cultural awareness with things like abstinence only. It's just an example, right? And honestly, have done a lot. I'm not a big fan of the term slut shaming because,
you're a slut.
Yeah.
Filthy, ignorant slut.
And I am shameful. But I do think that, if anybody's been guilty for most of the slut shaming, it's probably been the American evangelical or actually
Mormons.
Mainstream Catholic church. But even beyond slut shaming, we do a lot of disservices to people by saying, hey, you've used a condom? Well, you are not one of us.
Yeah.
Oh, you've used birth control? And I'm not advocating birth control, but I'm just saying there is more nuance than just telling somebody that they're not fit to participate in a community simply because of those choices they've made. When, there's many opportunities to tell people, instead of tell people what they're doing wrong, to tell people a better way.
Exactly.
Right? And I just think it's foolish, the issues that we choose to spearhead things on when I think there's just so much better opportunities. Instead of saying, hey, what does the Westboro Baptist Church say? They say God hates fags, and they have it on their signs. I take offense to that.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
I actually, if I saw any of those people, women included, I would punch them in the face.
I'd egg them.
Yeah, or egg them.
What type of lunatic would throw an egg?
This guy.
So I'm saying, instead of meeting culture that way, which we're called to do, we are called to be ministers of reconciliation, and we are called to bring the gospel to the world and baptize all people, right?
Right.
I don't know that necessarily means proselytize in the sense that we've described it or defined it.
Or penis thing.
Yeah, you don't preach love through hate.
Exactly. Right?
You don't do that. Maybe, teaching people to respect others just for being a human being. They're a human. They are an image bearer of Christ.
Exactly.
So
we have this problem in America with immorality, right? All the Christians are like, look at this country going to hell in a handbasket. All these people trying to take my guns and get married and be gay. And honestly, how different is that from any narrative in the Bible where people entered a culture and proclaimed Christ or proclaimed God before Christ had, Jonah going to the Ninevites. Jonah didn't like the Ninevites and actually was kind of a smug jerk.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even as bad as some of the movements that I've seen in the United States going out to reculturize different places and nations. And so I'm just saying, I don't know. And I think it's silly to say that abstinence is the only birth control method when obviously
pulling out,
it didn't work. Yeah. You got all kinds of good stuff.
Question. One last question to close the show out. As in your home, the role of a dad, especially a dad of young men, they look to you, they watch what you do. My son listens to what I say by the fact that he repeats bad words, all this stuff. When, your wife is struggling and you're talking to her and trying to support her and paying bills and doing all this, often it feels, very much like, okay, I'm a leader or I'm supposed to be the rock or I'm supposed to do this. And it's not that your wife doesn't help, but what do you guys do when you're doubting? Not just doubting yourself, not just doubting at work, like paying bills or, my marriage, how am I going to do this? But even doubting in your faith. Like, you're praying with your kids and saying, you need to follow this, but then you may be struggling with it, or you're wrestling with it, or you're telling them, God's good, but you have a week where you go, man, are you good? What do you guys do when, as a leader or as, a man that people are looking to, you're falling apart and you're doubting and you're like, I don't know. Like, you're supposed to be the one leading the charge, but what happens when, the colonel or the general, is like, man, I feel wounded. I feel kind of like I want to fall apart, or I feel like I've taken a lot of hits. I don't know if I can keep going with this. What do you guys do when you're doubting, when you have, and men, if you haven't had this, one, repent for lying. But two, those days where even like, there's some days you killed at work and other times you're driving home and you got yelled at by your boss. And you're like, oh my gosh. And just even thinking of, oh, we have that bill. Oh, you're freaking kidding me. Like, what do you guys do in those times?
That's a rough question. I mean, definitely I've been there. I think, I don't know, I learned somewhere at a young age that like, it's not weak to admit when you're down. It's not like I'll go to my wife. I have no problem sitting down with her and just telling her like, hey, I'm just not, like, I'm not in a good place. Like, I'm not, like work's been rough, or, my day just sucked, or, my mom called me and the conversation didn't go well, or, hey, I messed up and, my paycheck's not going to be what it was. And so unfortunately we're not going to be able to do this, this, and this. And, I think as far as like from a marriage standpoint, and I'm not always perfect at it. There's times where I'm just upset, irritable, mad, and my wife has to like really sit me down and,
now you're talking my language.
Yeah, and like, what's going on? Why are you acting? Why are you treating me like that? Why are you mad at Luke? Why are you doing this? And I'm looking at her like, why don't you just get it? And it's like, so, I mean, I've been on both sides of the aisle, but I do try to be transparent, specifically with the marriage part of it, with my wife, to say, hey, look, I'm always the first one to get up, last person to go to bed. I'm always willing to go above and beyond, work long hours, and I'm not going to complain. I'm not a complainer. I don't cry about it. But there are moments when it's like, dude, I'm tired. I have no more left to give. And part of it is my fault for not managing my time well, or, not paying attention to certain parts of my life that I should be. And so, I have to, admit those times. But I think too, is just letting my wife, like, be that voice, like, speak up, like, call me out, challenge me, and like with my son, I think it's a matter of, like, there's been times where I've had to sit down with Luke and apologize to him, sorry for being upset, sorry for being, it had nothing to do with you, and I think just, and it's hard. It's hard sitting down with my son because my son still is young enough that he sees me as, Superman. He sees me as dad. Like, I can do all things. I can fix everything. I'm smart. I'm this, I'm that. He loves it. He wants to wear his hat like me, his sunglasses like me. He wants to walk like me, and it's super cool, right? Like, I love that. And it warms my heart. But at the same time, I'm like, I fear the day when he realizes that I'm just a man.
Yeah.
But I think I would like to lead my family in a way where I never said I was more than that, right? So the day when my son realizes, like, oh wow, dad's just a man, just another person. He lies, he gets upset, he falls short. I can turn around and look at him and say, yeah, but I never proclaimed to be anything more than that. Like, you built this image of me up in your mind, and okay, maybe I did that because I always try to go above and beyond for my son. But at the same time, like, I didn't lie to you and say that I was more. So I know it's a hard question, and I'm just learning how to navigate this. I mean, I have a young family. I'm coming up on 10 years of marriage, but I still feel like we're young in our marriage. Yeah. So, but I think being a man, you have to be honest with yourselves. Like, be honest that you have a limitation. You do. You can't do it all. You can't, but at the same time, on the other side, it's like, I see men more often not lately lazy, like not working, not giving their best effort, not trying, not leading their wife at all, getting upset for the family falling apart. Like, there was somebody in my family just recently, my wife was telling me that they got mad because their wife doesn't respect them. I'm like, well, have you looked at yourself? Like, there's nothing to respect.
Dang.
Tony slapped him.
Smack. And it's just like, I just look at him like, there's nothing, give her something to respect.
Yeah.
Like, you're a bum, dude. You can't hold a job. You walk out on your family all the time because you have anxiety, which I get, anxiety is real. I'm not trying to talk down on people who deal with anxiety, but there's a point where if you have responsibility, anxiety is also not an excuse.
Yeah.
You have to get to the root of what's causing the anxiety. Are you allowing your wife to come alongside you and help you get through the anxiety? There's all sorts of different reasons, I think, for men falling short and not living out their leadership roles. But I think the biggest thing is, are you being transparent with the people around you who love you? But also, are you going to the cross and telling and laying it out to Christ, like I am weak, I fall short, like I need help, I need wisdom, I need help loving my wife through this situation that doesn't make sense to me, or I need help loving my son in a way that doesn't tear him down but builds him up, because I think it's really easy as a dad to just constantly drop the hammer, constantly just tell him to sit down, shut up, do this, brush teeth, clean your room, rah, 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 rah. When's the last time you just went out and had a fun day with him?
Yeah.
And we can justify all these reasons about, well, I have to work and I have to do this and I have to do that and da-da-da.
No.
It's like, well, again, like we were talking about in the kitchen, you signed up to be a husband. You signed up to be a father. You don't get to neglect those responsibilities because you're tired or overworked.
Right.
That means you might actually have to reflect on your life and figure a few things out. Maybe stop working so much. Adjust your budget, or stop lying to yourself and thinking that more money equals security, because it doesn't. At the end of the day, kids just want their dad. And wives, honestly, they just want a husband who legitimately loves them. And I think if you were actually to sit down with your families and ask, what your family wants, I don't think, at the end of the day, it's not about having more money. They just want to feel safe and taken care of and loved and feel like they can come home and have something to come home to. And you can do all those things, but you got to be intentional about it, and it takes effort. It takes just as much effort to be a good husband as it does to be a good employee.
Yeah.
It's good. I just crush it all the time. So I have to deal with this.
Just never be weak, and then you won't have that problem.
What about you, Sean?
I don't know. I feel like I stand apart in this room a little bit because I just I am still trying to figure out what it means to be that strong leader, strong man, all those things. And it's not something that comes natural to me. So this happens a lot. And, I can, first of all, let me just honestly say that prayer and fasting and solitude is a practice that, really does keep those days away, like an apple a day keeps a doctor away. If you engage in those spiritual disciplines, it does really do a lot. But it's not this solution to having a fleshly, sinful body, although it does help. So doing those things regularly does help. And I've noticed whenever I've ran into situations where I'm just doubting or struggling, it's because I haven't done those things in a long time, or I haven't put any priority on those things. But still, the fact of the matter is those things still happen and those times happen. And, I think you're right about transparency. And I think that, I have decided that there's absolutely nothing wrong with really trusting my wife to be a helper, right? And saying and being able to not only expose my vulnerabilities to her in those times, but also asking her for help. You know what I mean? Part of being a leader, at least in my experience, is not always deciding that I have everything figured out. And even asking my wife for help, even though it sounds weak and like a beta male thing to do, I think it's important. First of all, because she can be trusted with it, because she is a strong, independent woman, not in the, modern cultural, you don't need no man sense, but she is a strong, independent woman. And sometimes she can take the, a baton? She could take the baton for a while I need to recover or something like that. Or sometimes she can, like you said, speak wisdom into my life and be a way that I can recover. And I've heard this said, and it's kind of a corny cliche, but the Holy Spirit speaks most strongly through my wife to me, right? Mm-hmm. And it often sounds like her voice. Yeah. And a lot of times she'll tell me something and I'll be like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And after a while I realize that's exactly what God's trying to tell me. Yeah. And brought it to my attention so clearly through that. When it comes to leading them towards a faith that I'm not feeling 100% secure in, that's a tricky thing. But, since I don't have a very good vocabulary, I battle my lack of faith with faith in that I know like I have feelings. I've always had a lot of feelings, and my feelings have never pointed me in the right direction. But like truth is a different thing from feelings. And sometimes they overlap, but usually they don't. And so I constantly have a narrative in my head where I'm resetting, like every 30 seconds, I'm resetting and saying, okay, what are you believing right now? What are you feeling right now? Is that true? Does that line up with what you know are truths in the gospel? Or is that stuff that you're telling yourself? Is that maybe the enemy speaking into your life? Is that potentially like you just being prideful and refusing to accept that you're wrong or whatever? And I'm like constantly doing this thing. Like I'm constantly in this weird sync state. I'm like a Roomba robot. And I'm just constantly bumping into walls and saying, okay, which way do I go now? And I think that, you know, being self-reflective and honest with myself has been extremely important in those times, because I can honestly say what I'm feeling, and being honest with God. A lot of times my prayers to God actually sound like arguments, one-sided arguments. And, you know, a lot of times, like, I think it's been really liberating to be able to be honest with God about how I feel. Mm-hmm. And I was never taught that. I was never taught any of this. I was just taught, you know, you name it and claim it, and you ask for health and wealth, and if it's not happening, you don't have enough faith. I'm learning that that's not true, and I have to really try my best to associate myself with, you know, apostles and martyrs who have dealt with the same stuff under more extreme circumstances, and really see the big picture of you know, God's plan for my life and stuff like that. And eventually I come out of it. I feel like that's the big thing that I have to keep telling myself is like, this will go away. If I eat a hamburger, or, you know, maybe my testosterone comes back into play or something like that, there's always like something that's screwing me up, and I feel like eventually I come out of it. But I can't say that's true for everybody. I don't know if that's true for people who aren't filled with the Holy Spirit, you know? So I don't know what to say about that, but I know that, I mean, Seth, you've known me for a long time. You know that I'm just like spitballing here and trying to gain wisdom from as many people that I respect as I can, and trying to undo traumatically, scarred things in my soul and stuff like that, and trying to figure it all out from there. But I don't know that I've only been 2 times that I can remember since I've become a Christian in this deep spot of despair. And one time was legitimate, like, spiritual attack, like in the most supernatural way you could imagine. You know what I mean? It was not like my surroundings or my associations. It was just literally, for whatever reason, for about a month and a half, I was like in this severe depression, and it was like really bad. And I remember that, and I remember just like hating it and wanting it to be done, but just still like clinging to the truths. And those are scary times, because I'm like, oh man, you know, what's the biggest truth is that I know that I'll be with Jesus one day, and gosh, I can't wait until that happens. And like, I pray that happens sooner and sooner. And I could see how that could go down a dark path. But then another time I've been in a very, very, very oppressive, dark place. And it was just literally because of my thinking, my own mental screwed up craziness. And like, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Because it's like my thinking is putting me there, but it's also, you know, to some degree my thinking that's going to relieve it from me.
Sure.
So I don't know.
That's crazy. A hard one, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't think I've ever really struggled with specifically like depression or anxiety. So sometimes when I hear people talk about it, it's really hard for me to relate, because it's just never been something that's been a thing.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm being honest, like the first time I ever felt anxiety was last year.
Really?
It was the first time. Like, yeah, wow. I remember one night I couldn't sleep. We just had some stuff going on at home. I couldn't sleep. My wife was up, you know, she's checking on me, and I couldn't figure out what was happening, because it was like a physical thing. Like, physically, I was just like, man, what did I couldn't get my head right. I couldn't get my mind right. I couldn't get my heart to relax. I couldn't get comfortable. I felt like something was just wrapped around my throat. Like, I just was just like, dude, what is happening? I was just out of my mind. I felt like I'd never felt anything like that before. You know, I've always been able to like calm myself down, collect my thoughts, you know, get my blood. Like, I've always just been able to have that self-control. But this one night, I just couldn't. And it was last year. So I was 28.
Yeah, old-ass man.
And as I'm talking to other people, they're like, dude, that's anxiety.
Yeah, totally.
That's what anxiety does. It cripples you. Like, it stops you. You have physical reactions to it. You can't control it. And but then it was gone the next day. So so it's like, I've had a very small relationship with it. And depression didn't exist like growing up, because basically, like, how I grew up was, if you allowed depression to get the best of you, you failed.
Right.
Like you, if depression kept you, it was going to keep you poor. It was going to keep you held down. And so I learned at a young age, like, oh, I can't get myself into that. Cause I saw what it did to my mom. She was taking pills, different things. Her life wasn't going right. My brother's life wasn't going right. They turned to different substances. And so for me, I'm just like, all right, so I can't allow that in my life. So I won't. And so I just learned to be a very push forward person. And so my problem is I think because of that, I'm very emotionally detached in certain ways, and I can bulldoze and go too fast and not think about the casualties around me, because I'm too busy, trying to push the bar, trying to push forward, trying to make things happen, and not be where I was when I was a kid, and still to this day, like, that is very much a driving factor. Like, I want my son to know who I am, because I never knew my father, and I don't give emotions certain time, because I saw what my family went through, and it's like, well, that didn't get them anywhere, so I can't spend any time there.
Yeah.
And so it sucks, because I feel like sometimes when I hear people talk, what I'm trying to say is, when I hear people talk about anxiety or depression, there's a part of me that feels kind of guilty, because I'm like, man, I don't know how to relate to what it is that you're going through.
Yeah.
But I understand that it's serious, and I understand that it's real, but it's just hard for me to, like, love a person in that. My wife and I were talking about this the other day, because we had a friend that was talking about, a Christian friend that was talking about taking certain things to get over their anxiety. And I'm in this middle ground of, like, well, like, and again, not understanding it, I probably sound very ignorant. It's like, shouldn't you get to the bottom of your depression and anxiety and figure out what it is and deal with it so it's not bothering you anymore? Mm. Like, why are you taking something? I don't understand. Isn't that just like a Band-Aid for the condition? Like, I don't.
Interesting.
So, like, for me, when I hear about it, I'm just like, what is it? How do you deal with it? I'm lost. Yeah. I'm being honest. I'm lost when it comes. I mean, Seth, I know you've dealt with anxiety a lot.
Just a little.
So basically what I'm trying to open the conversation, like, a part of, like, being a father, and the question that Seth asked, and being a leader in these things, like, so how do you deal with those things? Like, how do you get through those things? I don't understand.
I know that I don't know the answer to that question, but I know, like, I see biblical characters like Jeremiah, and, like, that dude was, like, always bummed out. And I don't know if that was because the message God had for him to give was really crappy, or if it was just he was like a bummed out dude. But, like, you never hear about him being like, oh, but it's all over now, and I'm good now. Sure. I got a hot tub. Right. We're all, everything's, I've arrived. Yeah, everything's better.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a lot of characters like that are just, like, burdened, like, always burdened. I think of Charles Spurgeon, too. Like, Charles Spurgeon writes about depression and, like, his guilt and shame and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I think this guy struggled with what we would call nowadays, like, some extreme anxiety.
Okay.
And it's like, sometimes that's not something, I know that there's some people or some situations where, like, that is just the thorn in their side.
Yeah.
That's not removed for their whole life. And they struggle with it, and they overcome it, but they never stop having to deal with it.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
In my experience. And I don't know, too. Like I said, I have limited experience with it as well. I know, like, I'm finding out more and more a lot of the things I do are because of some anxiety of some areas that I haven't, like, I've maybe prevented the Holy Spirit from, like, really redeeming in my life, or just straight up anxiety because they are the way they are. And I'm finding, because I feel exactly like you're saying, like, I have a hard time empathizing with people who say they have anxiety. But I'm finding more and more a lot of the stuff that I do that's unhealthy is actually anxiety and trauma-based. You know what I mean? And it's just like simple little stupid things every day that I've always thought was no big deal. And now I'm realizing, oh, like, that's something that is a wound. that needs to be healed,
Okay.
So it's crazy. I don't know. Seth, what do you think?
Yeah, I didn't know we were going to go, because it kind of went to depression, anxiety, switched really like the focal point. So I had to think about it for a second, because I feel like we started on one page, but then took it deeper.
Okay.
Tony did. I was with you.
I know. We went from like, hey, what are you doing? You're kind of wrestle with this, to like, well, there's lots of things. It could be, they have shown it can be biological. There are some people where literally they're looking at brain scans and going, oh, there's something going on. It's shown. There's some where I think it can be spiritual. You have someone who doesn't wrestle with depression, and suddenly, like, I've seen this after someone preaches a sermon or something happens. Suddenly all this stuff rushes in. It's just exaggerated. It's terrible. It's out of character. Some people might be circumstance, that they wouldn't normally be depressed, but they come home from war, they have PTSD. They've seen something that just is too much for their brain to process. So I think there's a lot of things you can discuss, because it's like saying if you look at someone and they're unhealthy, why unhealthy? Could be laziness, could be they went through cancer treatments, could be, I mean, there's so many things, because you're dealing with something that's metaphysical, because the consciousness is, you can't physically see it, and you're trying to pin it down. And there is some people I've known who literally, they take some medicine and they go, oh, I'm fine. One of the things Piper used to do whenever someone said they were depressed was first thing he'd ask is, how often are you sleeping? How much? And some people, they go to sleep 8 hours a night, and then suddenly a month later they're not depressed. So some of it's circumstantial. So there's lots of things to maneuver. I would say the first time I really felt depressed, I was 7. So, and I remember wondering about things and even being like, man, this feels like a dark cloud. I don't even know why I am. And I just try to wrestle through it and try to be positive and try to pray, and people get mad at me because I'm trying, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, you have guys like Spurgeon, Jeremiah, Elijah, actually a lot of the prophets who wrestled through it. Yeah, it depends on the person, because don't get me wrong, you can have someone who, it's self-pity and they're just negative. They really are just, they don't want to solve anything. Then you can have someone who, maybe it was a circumstance where they saw their friend die in Iraq and they're jacked up and they need that. Some you might go, it really is like a chemical. And there's something really, some of them, they've seen trauma where chemically they're jacked up, like bipolar. Something's messed up in their brain. Or then some, it really is warfare, where you're like, man, why are they getting attacked like this? But some, we don't necessarily get an answer, because everyone thinks Spurgeon was only really depressed after an accident where this guy died during one of his sermons. Some people died, actually, because a guy yelled fire in the middle of a sermon.
No, he struggled with depression his whole life.
But he stated that it was his whole life. And that sometimes he'd get frustrated because he had all these books on mental health. He tried to sleep. He went to a doctor. His wife would try to help him. And yet he just felt so burdened where literally one time he couldn't even preach. He was just torn up. And he said, I pity a dog that has to suffer what I felt or thought. And so, yeah, it's a discussion, I think, where you just have to walk them through it, because some people might not. I get it. Some people might go, well, I don't know why are you so hindered right now? And then some might, no joke, I know some like PTSD friends of mine who were in war, they took medicine, they're doing pretty good.
Okay.
And then other guys, it didn't help at all.
Part of the reason why I'm asking is because, like specifically speaking, a part of like men being leaders, or being fathers, stuff like that. Part of the reason why I'm asking is because sometimes, I think it's pretty insensitive of me, but sometimes I have the attitude of, dude, like, I get you're depressed, I get you're anxious, but like, you have people relying on you. Mm-hmm. You can't just stay crippled and stay in this position. And unfortunately, because of my family's substance abuse, when people talk about taking medications, I already have like a negative, like, no, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I'm not trying to come off as insensitive. I think where I'm coming from is I'm coming from a place of like, yeah, substances may get you to a place where you can relax and sleep, like you're saying. But at the end of the day, like, it's not, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's not the cure. It's right. Or am I going the wrong direction with it?
I think you're totally right. Like, a substance shouldn't be your source for peace, although it may help you. For some people, it may help you to attain that. But I do think that there's people who are systematically almost completely motivated to seek that, and like literally do not have the strength in themselves to get themselves off that. I think that happens a lot.
So I have somebody in my life who recently admitted to me that they started taking like CBD oil, stuff like that, because they deal with anxiety. And they felt like that was the
grow up and do cocaine like an adult.
That's what I do.
And the only reason why I was kind of for them at the beginning was like, oh, cool. Because I saw a change. And I saw the fact that they were able to have conversations about things that before, if you had the conversation, dude, you'd wreck them because the anxiety would come back, the PTSD would come back, whatever. And they just couldn't work through it. And then, but with the direction they were taking with like the CBD and whatever, all of a sudden they were able to have certain conversations, work through certain things because the anxiety wouldn't get best of them. So at first I was all for it. Then again, I see that they stayed on it even after they started working through it. And I'm like, okay, so this is where I get confused because as we're working on it, aren't we working away from the medication to still work through the... See, this is where I get a little confused because at the end of the day, I want to be somebody there supporting somebody through depression because I know I've seen the crippling effects of it and where it can bring people into a low spot where they want to do things like self-harm or whatever. And I never want somebody to go that direction.
In their mouth, yeah.
But seriously, that's where people want to go when they just feel like they're never going to be happy. So I don't want to be insensitive or discouraged, but at the same time, I also don't want to, condone the wrong process, if that makes sense. I don't know.
No, I think it's because we're assuming some things are opposed to each other. The thing is this. Regardless of whether you're happy or sad, as a Christian, you should be going to Christ for peace. You should be going to him regardless. It doesn't matter where you're depressed or sad or happy and joyful all the time. You should be looking to him, going to him, saying, I want peace in you. That you're the person where my foundation is. You're where my structure is. So that should always be pursued regardless. Okay. However, there are some people where legitimately guys go, okay, well, just find the source. And there is no source. Legitimately, they cannot find an answer for it. They've gone to all the counselors, done all the work, and they can't find a source. So I'd be okay with them taking this stuff because literally they go, no, I cannot find any logical explanation for this. I just want to die. I just want to die. But I would still ask them, I'd still say, hey, that is great that you feel better. Still, every day remember that he's still your foundation. Still go to him, still pray. So it's a both and to me. It's, hey, if you need to keep taking this, go to Christ and still go, hey, ultimately though, you're the one who's in charge of my ultimate peace. If you can get off it and you get better, still, you're my ultimate peace. If you backslide it and need to get back on, still, it's gotta be the same answer. So I'd say both and, because some people do this. They go, well, you should go to Jesus first. You don't need that. Well, half of what they're saying is true. Yeah, you should go to Jesus. And then some go, well, it really helps with my depression. I'm fine now. I go, hold on. I'm glad. You still are supposed to go to him. Because here's the thing. Even if you think of it this way, even if it's blessing you, it was through God's providence that you were able to have it. And he ultimately is still the one you're supposed to talk to and pray through. Because I do believe this. I do believe if you rely on it too much and it fixes your anxiety, does all that, you're not numb, fine. It still in the end will become something where you might not feel it as deeply or want to kill yourself, but you'll still feel a little bit of lacking, I think, eventually. Still a little bit of discontentment or, I don't know why. Why do I feel a little just missing or a little pull still that I want something in this space? And it's because you're still supposed to be going to God. You're still supposed to, in your relationship, prayer is not just to get things.
Right.
It's to go to God, to meet him in your suffering, to go, hey, Jesus, you were tortured by men like an animal, rose again 3 days later. Think of this. If God is 100% human, he didn't just forget that. Jesus lives with that memory. He has that memory. He didn't just forget. He went, a few days ago I was tortured to death by my creation. I was naked and butchered. Oh, that doesn't bother me. No, he is 100% human. He remembers that. And he went to the Father. And I believe Jesus has healing in that he's, king, he's whole, he's all that. But I don't believe that in the Trinity, he just went, it's because I forgot about it. He was renewed, he ascended. I believed he was cared for by angels. I believe, he's in heaven reigning, all that. But we're supposed to go to him in prayer and say, hey, regardless of how I'm feeling or if I'm high right now, if I'm buzzed, if something's numbing the pain, there still was a pain to begin with. and I need to bring it to you. Because even if there is a cause, you need to talk to him about the cause of, hey, I was molested as a kid, I need to talk to you. If there's not a cause and it's biological, you need to say, hey, I need to mourn with you that we're in a fallen world and I have this biological problem. If there's no biological thing, you can't find a cause, you still need to say, hey, what a crappy suffering we live in this world that for no reason at all I still deal with this. I still need to be in communication with you. Like with my wife, I shouldn't just talk to her about lust when I've looked at porn. I should just be talking to her about when I'm having victory, why I think I deal with it, the struggles, some of the thoughts I have on it, the things I wrestle with through it, daily of why am I going to this, and even just the question of what a world we live in of like, man, why am I ungrateful? Why aren't you enough? Why do I do a section? I should be in this continual relationship with her. So it's hard because I get what you mean. And to your point, there is something to be said of sometimes, and this is where it's a balancing thing. It's balance. Sometimes you do need to suck it up where literally you go, no, I need to fight right now. I don't feel like fighting. I don't want to fight, but I need to fight. I need to help my family. The opposite end of that ditch is where men are always doing that and going, okay, I need to suck it up. I need to keep going and people depend on me. Cause you have the two sides of the ditch. You have the guy who falls apart at the drop of a hat and he won't get back up. He gets hit and you're like, dude, get up, man. Like come on. Your family needs you. And then there's the other guy who just is always fighting through it. And if you look at the suicide rates of men in their 40s and how they talk about being lonely and they can't talk about it and they put a gun in their mouth, those are the opposite ends of the spectrum versus I need to fight, but keep in the back of your head. But at some point, I need to find a fellow man and talk to him and say, hey, I have a wound right now. Like I got shot. I took a hit. I need to talk to someone. Cause those are two things. My dad grew up going, you fight to the end. Yeah. You just go through it. And then there are other friends I have now where I have to seriously look at them and go, dude, you gotta get up. Well, I feel that I know, but you don't just fight when you feel like it. You fight when when there's a fight. You don't just fight wars you think you can win or the wars that you think, you're comfortable with or you're ready for. No, you fight the wars that need to be fought. It's because there's a battle and it needs to be won. So, I mean, and this is we're trying to summarize depression and mental health with men with like a bus supervisor, IT guy. I mean, I
was just going to say too, though, I can think of a couple of instances in the Bible where the biblical advice was, hey, here's a substance for you.
Give strong drink to those who are oppressed.
Proverbs 31, I think 4, yeah. Give strong drink to those who are oppressed and dying.
To help them forget their troubles.
Their troubles.
Okay.
And then I also think of Paul, I think telling Timothy, he's like, hey, if you have stomach problems,
drink wine.
Drink more wine. Stop drinking so much water. And then I also think of like Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, who they were like, we're just going to eat vegetables. We're just going to do this vegan thing for a while. And like those are all substances. And it's weird to imagine that at any time God could have said, I'm going to make it so that you don't need these substances.
Right.
You can depend completely on me and these substances won't do anything for you. But that isn't how the story worked out. Now, we're in a different age where there's like, SSRIs and
there's
all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And I think I see people using things as an excuse more than I see using them for their health. But I do think that occasionally part of this creation being dominated by humans is that we can, to some extent, use it as like a means or a shadow of the comfort and peace that we would experience, like, apart from our sinful bodies. I think, right? I mean, that's why, like, also it says God made wine to make the heart of man merry.
Yeah. Well, even the verse you used, the translation literally, someone who's oppressed or poor, give them strong alcohol so they can just forget it for a second. You go, what? But it's talk about, because there's two different types of, when I think of shalom, I think of two different types of peace. There's three. There's ultimate shalom, new heaven, new earth, everything's fine.
Yes.
There's big picture shalom where systematically you're looking at, a ceasing of hostilities, a war ends, there's a treaty, there's surrender. And then there's a momentary shalom of this. You see a guy who's poor outside the Rayleighs, and you say, hey, can I buy you water and some food? And you give it to him. And people go, well, it's not going to fix everything. No, but in those 5 minutes, he felt human. He gets shalom just for a little thing. I think we need to see some of these medicines as
that momentary.
Yeah, they're a momentary shalom. We hope for the future ultimate shalom. And maybe even as a church, we can look for ways to give them that in between, that systematic big picture shalom, at least to an earthly extent of, hey, maybe we can have more resources for counseling, or maybe we can have more groups where people can meet and talk about depression at church and we pray for them, or more support groups for widows, or more support groups for veterans, the PTSD. So there's lots of, once again, we think so much, it shows our politics within extreme solutions and 180 solutions and partisan kind of like this or that, black or white, instead of a both and of, hey, maybe it's a complex thing with multiple solutions and different answers in different times and ways to maneuver it. And I'm going to answer someone who's having an affair in soul care different than I'm going to answer someone who struggles with cussing.
Sure.
It's going to be.
Sure.
So if someone says, hey, I'm having this in mental health, I'm going to say, tell me your story, because that's going to determine so much of what's going on. What are you taking? Why are you taking? Why are you not taking? To what degree? How'd you grow up? And I may say something that's a yes for someone that would be a no. That I tell you, Tony, no. I'd go, no, you don't take that.
Right.
You're like, oh, I have substance abuse in this family. I go, nope.
Yep.
Don't do it. And someone else, I go, absolutely, you need to take it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Our callers are standing by. Call us with your favorite penis question. Caller? Hello? Did we lose him?
I think, yeah, sorry, the phone wasn't
Francine?
on.
Okay.
Francine. Janet!
This is like every time we try to get this going. This is the sweepstakes all over again. Goodness. I think
Yeah,
we're
we gotta put the kids to bed.
Yeah. And that's not code word for taking a dump. Some of you guys are wondering.
Yeah. Well.
I affirm
Not for
you,
you.
Tony. I affirm you, Tony. I
Thank
affirm
you.
you, Sean, and I am very firm.
Thank you. You are firm. All right. Well, that's been Tales from the Ditch. As usual, we would love to hear your feedback.
Yeah.
If you want to donate to our campaign to get Hickman, LaRaz Silva, and or our favorite guy, Ribic, to
Yes.
make some tracks, head on over to our Patreon at talesfromtheditch. Or patreon.com/talesfromtheditch. We don't expect this to
Patronus.
work.
We don't.
But if you want Seth to finally finish his novel, and me to finish my novella, and Tony to finally finish his sandwich, please donate. And I think that's about it. Oh, talesfromtheditch@gmail.com and website at talesfromtheditch.download. Zip it up, Tony.
Zip it out.
That's right.